Natalie found the board game in the basement. The title of the game was Bonecrusher Park. The board itself was folded in half. She opened it up and slid it between us after lightly pushing the box off the table and dusting the surface with her palm. There was a black marble textured glass bubble in the center, illustrations of pine trees, and many squares with different numbers all around the edges. I took a seat across from her and stared at the packaging of the board game. There was an illustration of a Day of the Dead style skeleton on the front with ivory face paint and a jaggedly arranged body. The backdrop was of a fountain and a series of beige brick buildings. "You have to check this out," she said as she straightened it out on the coffee table. After the box was set down, she cracked a window open behind her in the living room to let fresh air stream in, a result of her having been in the stuffy subterranean cellar that I had rarely gone in. My girlfriend was covered in dust mites and swatted them off of her maroon sweatshirt before she took a seat in front of the item. "Why were you down there?" I asked. "I lost a necklace last week and thought I might have dropped or accidentally kicked it beneath the doorway. I couldn't find it. The basement needs a key." "How'd you get into it?" "It was left open. My parents were out of the house on a business trip." As a teenager who understood that such opportunities for a lone time were fleeting, I invited Natalie to stay with me for the entirety of their absence. She found a note card with the rules taped to the underside of the board. "The goal of the game is to break more bones of your opponent by landing in a higher number and strategizing which move to make without the other player blocking your forward progress," she read. "Select which player will be the hammer wielder and which one will be the midnight jogger in the park." She did not see the printing on the back. I did. It read, "Those within your immediate vicinity will find themselves dealing with the same problems as the jogger if it lands on their numerological birth number." She set the card down and stared at me. "What?" I said. "Let's play," she said. "You can be the bad guy with the hammer." "No," I said. "Why not? It'll be fun." "It seems morbid." "I'm more in the mood for a movie. There's a frozen pizza in the fridge." She stood up and folded her arms. It was obvious she was holding volatile words back. The pent-up body language I had become accustomed to when seeing her upset was impossible for her to hide. "You don't like that idea?" I asked. "You never want to do anything spontaneous," she said, as she turned her back on me to face the window. Moonlight streamed in through the glass pane. I repressed a sigh, which I knew she would interpret as dismissive, a sign of defeat, or as personal. I stood and wrapped my arms around her. I stared at the board game. Even when I was younger, I never got into games like Clue, Monopoly, or War. I came of age during the video game era, which to me was a natural evolution of what having fun meant. I also knew that relationships sometimes required compromise. "Let's play it," I said. "I'm open-minded. It might be engaging. Let's secure that basement door. When we're finished though, I don't want my mom and dad knowing we snooped around in there." I decided to roll the 6-sided dice first. For the rules, I started on the other end of the board and was only able to move a few squares after I rolled a 4. At that point, I was not impressed with the playing elements, nor did I find it very stimulating. Yet I was invested in doing everything I could to ensure my little murder caught up with the jogger. Natalie had much better luck and was able to gain more progress and greater distance from the maniac with her piece. "We should make a bet," she said. "That's easy for you to say. You're winning so far. The tides can change. It's still a risk. Whoever loses today buys concert tickets to Shore." The venue she referenced was holding an all-ages event this coming weekend. While I was willing to purchase the tickets regardless, I could tell the stakes made her happier to participate in the game. "Deal," I said. I rolled again. The dice landed on 6. A scream echoed by the window outside. I stood and went to the pane. My neighbor, Mr. Bentley, was limping along the main concrete pathway which led to his mailbox across his lawn. His right leg looked twisted in an unnatural direction. With each step he put unnecessary pressure and stress on his knee. His leg reminded me of the Stretch Armstrong doll my father shared with me from his childhood. For a moment I considered calling 911, but when I looked even closer at him I saw he was on his cell phone. He fell. His cheek hit the sharp end of the white picket fence that divided our homes. The amount of blood that sprayed everywhere on the grass and the painted wood made me nauseous. The laceration on his face revealed a pinkish-white opening. Pus and shredded flesh inside the fresh cut picked up bits of leaves as he lay there in agony. My concern for his safety escalated. I was mortified and wanted to help, but I did not want to get splattered with my neighbor's gore. I picked up the phone. We were always taught to respect our neighbor's privacy, sometimes to a fault. You saw a man bringing a random woman you knew was not his wife. You did not spread gossip. If you saw a potentially drunk neighbor inflict an injury on themselves, then it was better to let their significant other shame them than you. Yet the incident I saw had me way too concerned to pretend as though it did not happen. I dialed 911. The paramedics arrived with flashing lights and sirens. They strapped him to a gurney, secured him in the back of the ambulance, and left. Do you think it landed on Mr. Bentley's birth number? Natalie asked. You can't be serious, I said with a laugh. That wasn't the game, it was his love of scotch. Let's keep playing. The wax figure with a hammer approached Natalie's piece. I hit upon a lucky streak with the dice, and was gradually catching up to her component. A part of me considered holding back on strategizing so many hurdles to make her slow down. Perhaps if I let her win we would have an easier night, and the game would be over faster. I could check our streaming services for something good to watch, and the whole experience would be a distant memory we would likely never revisit, as we fell asleep in each other's arms. Yet the competitive part of me made itself known. It has always been an ugly trait of mine to one-up any and everyone who dared try to prove themselves as something better than me at anything. I was a freestyle wrestler in middle school, and although each match ended with a handshake that had more finality than seemingly anything else in life, whatever happened on the mats could only be described as a showing of brute strength and resilience to beat the opponent. This was how I treated anything that had guidelines, which could be akin to a contest. I wanted to kill her character and be victorious in the game. I rolled the dice when it was my turn. My piece was barely a millimeter away from Natalie's. The black marble rock in the center swirled beneath the surface as though it had come to life. It resembled what I envisioned a witch's scrying goblet would look like. It became darkly milky, a telescopic glance into a different solar system. The numbers I rolled came up as though it were a miniature phone screen. The outline of a hammer appeared behind the numbers. Bang, I said with a smile, as I mimicked the raising and smashing of an invisible hammer on her jogger icon. She did not look amused. She was appalled, and at that moment I would not have been surprised if she broke up with me. Natalie fell off the couch and through the glass table. As her screams broke through the silence of the room, I looked down and saw her wrist had snapped. The bone protruded through the skin. She gazed up at me with her now serrated face and showed me the severe arm injury and a plea for help. I did not waste time in calling the paramedics once more as adrenaline and anxiety coursed through me. As the dispatcher asked me a series of questions calmly during the crisis, I stared down at my girlfriend as she laid there wailing. The board game was right next to her, splattered with blood and shards of glass. I had to destroy it. This was all much too sequential to be a coincidence. While making the call and endeavoring to be helpful, I stuffed the dice in my pockets. I reached by her head to get to the board. Her vital fluid and bits of sharp glassware covered my skin and left micro cuts. I grabbed the board, folded it in half, and tossed it across the room out of rage. There on the way, I told her I hoped my words would be reassuring, but all they did was fail to cause any kind of response, as she was still overwhelmed with pain. I walked over to the front door and propped it open so the medical team would have ease of access. Once they arrived, they carried her out and placed her in the back of the ambulance. You can ride with us to the hospital, or drive there if you would like, the lead emergency personnel said to me as he took field notes on an iPad. I'll go with you guys, I said. I sat in the front listening to Natalie shriek. Can't you give her any pain medicine? I asked the driver as we soared down a street with perfectly cut lawns and fountains. They're putting her arm in a sling right now, but my team will administer something soon. Please do that, I said. I attempted to hide my impatience. Each moment of her audible discomfort caused me to want to protect her in some way and help her navigate the terror she was going through, but I had the sense that I was not only culpable, but helpless as well. She screamed again. I sat up and whipped around to try and get into the back through the mounted window. The paramedic put his forearm out across my chest. Stay seated, young man. They are helping her out. You going back there would be a major safety hazard. Maybe you all should do your job so I don't have to free you, I said. I immediately felt a sense of regret. Firefighters and EMS were heroes in my household, and my being quick-tempered with them was not going to help matters, and I knew that. He looked at me and focused his eyes back on the road. I looked down and saw an ID. Someone's driver's license is at my feet, I said. Okay, the driver said. I'll turn it into the front desk at the hospital when we get there so they can log it into Lost and Found. I squinted even harder at it and my stomach sank. The dice had somehow fallen out of my pockets and landed on the numbers printed on the driver's license. I yelled and punched the ceiling. Someone else was going to experience the pain Natalie was feeling because of me. I hoped it was not going to be her again if any of those numbers were her birth ones. I clenched my teeth and waited for a different sound. I looked over and saw the driver's arms shatter. It was as though some unseen deity had crushed the bones from his elbows on down to mush as he slumped forward. The ambulance ran off the road. The wheels grinder and smoke emanated from the engine as it tipped on its side. We hit a tree. The driver died instantly upon impact. As the front windshield broke apart, I crawled out and saw a house with its lights on in the distance. I would eventually reach it. By the time the residents dialed for help, it was far too late.